Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Kelley again, and today we're going to read part 3 of the Speckled Band. First, I want to review a little bit of part 2. We found out that there is a motive, which is the money that the mother left Dr. Roylott to raise her children, and if there was still money left over after the girls were grown and they were getting married, then he was to split the money 3 ways with the 3 girls. So that is a motive to kill. And then we learned that Helen came to see Sherlock because she had originally thought that her twin sister, had died from mere fright, being frightened to death by something, but she didn't know what. But now she's starting to hear the same scary noises, the low whistle sound in the room, because Dr. Roylott has supposedly been doing repairs in her room, even though she knows that was just a way to get her to move into Julia's old room. And now she's hearing that low whistle sound that Julia had asked her the night she died. So anyways, let's get to part 3 now. And we will begin. Let's see if I can find my page here. Oh, my numbers moved there. Okay, so we passed at once to the one in which Miss Stoner was now sleeping, and in which her sister had met her fate, which meant death. It was a homely little room with a low ceiling and a gaping fireplace. A brown chest of drawers stood in one corner, a narrow bed in another, and a dressing table on the left-hand side of the window. Holmes drew one of the chairs into a corner and sat silent, while his eyes traveled around and round in the room and up and down, taking in every single detail of her bedroom. "Where does that bell communicate with?" he asked at last, pointing to a thick bell rope that hung down beside the bed. "It goes to the housekeeper's room. It looks newer than the other things." "Yes, it was put there a couple years ago." "Your sister asked for it, I suppose?" "No, I never heard of her using it. We used always to get what we wanted for ourselves." "Indeed, it seems unnecessary to put so nice a bell rope there. You will excuse me for a few minutes while I examine this floor." He threw himself down upon his face and crawled swiftly backwards and forwards, examining closely the cracks between the boards. Then he did the same with the woodwork. Finally, he walked over to the bed and spent some time staring at it, running his eyes up and down the wall. Then he took the bell rope and gave it a brisk tug. Now, boys and girls, a bell rope is back in the olden days, for mansions, people with lots of money used to have bell ropes, and it was attached to a wiring system that went down to the servants' quarters, or where the servants stayed, and it would ring a bell and a light up, so it would show them who was ringing the bell. Okay, so all the person had to do next to their bed was pull it, and it would then ring the servant so they knew that they needed help. "Why, it's a dummy," said he. "It's not even attached to a wire." "Ah, boys and girls, it means it's fake. This is very interesting. It is fastened to a hook just above where the little opening of the ventilator is." "How absurd! I never noticed that before." "Very strange," muttered Holmes. "There are 1 or 2 unusual points about this room. For example, what a fool a builder must be to open a vent into another room, when with the same trouble he might have the outside air." "That is also quite new," said the lady. "Done about the same time as the bell rope?" remarked Holmes. "Yes, there were several little changes carried out about that time." Okay, boys and girls, so now we're learning that right before when he found out that her sister was getting married, he started doing some repairs in her old room, he fixed the stuff up and had done it right before she moved in. And so he added a fake bell rope. Of course, Julia didn't know it was fake. And a fake ventilator. And a ventilator is like an air duct. But in this case, the ventilator, they didn't have air conditioning back then. And so the ventilator like basically opened to the room on the other side of the wall, which happens to be whose room? Ah, Dr. Roylott's. That's correct, boys and girls. Okay, here we go. They have a most interesting character, dummy bell ropes and ventilators that do not ventilate. With your permission, Miss Stoner, we shall now carry our researches into the doctor's room. Dr. Roylott's chamber, which means bedroom, was larger than that of his stepdaughter, but was as plainly furnished. A bed, a small wooden shelf full of books, an armchair beside the bed, a plain wooden chair against the wall, a round table, a large iron safe where the principal things. Holmes slowly examined each of them with keen interest. "What's in here?" he asked, tapping the safe. "My stepfather's business papers." "Oh, you have seen inside then?" "Only once, some years ago. I remember that it was full of papers." "There isn't a cat in it, for example." "No, what a strange idea." "Well, look at this." He took up a small saucer of milk that stood on the top of it. "No, we don't keep a cat, but there is a cheetah and a baboon." "Ah, yes, of course. Well, a cheetah is just a big cat, yet a saucer of milk would not go very far in satisfying, I dare say." Now, boys and girls, a saucer is like if you have a teacup and you have your little saucer. It's a very small plate, no larger than about 5 inches in diameter. So from across the plate. So it's very small. That would not fill up a cheetah, who is quite large. "There is one point that I should wish to determine." He squatted down in front of the wooden chair and examined the seat of it with great intention. "Thank you. That is quite settled," said he, rising. "Hello, here is something interesting." The object that caught his eye was a small dog leash, hung on in the corner of the bed. It was curled upon itself and tied so as to make a loop. "What do you make of that, Watson?" "It's a common enough leash, but I don't know why it should be tied." So, boys and girls, meaning that the leash was tied so that it was even smaller than, it was already a small leash, but it was tied so that it would even fit something much smaller. That is not quite so common, is it? Ah, me, it's a wicked world, and when a clever man turns his brain to crime, it is the worst of all. I think that I have seen enough, Miss Stoner, and with your permission, shall walk upon the lawn. I have never seen my friend's face so grim, or his brows so dark, as it was when we turned from the scene of this investigation. "It is very essential, Miss Stoner," said he, "that you absolutely followed my advice." "I shall most certainly do so. The matter is too serious for any hesitation. Your life may depend upon your compliance. I assure you that I am in your hands. In the first place, Dr. Watson, I must spend the night in your room. In the first place, Dr. Watson and I must spend the night in your room." Both Miss Stoner and I gazed at him in astonishment. "Yes, it must be so. Let me explain. I believe that there is a village inn over there." "Yes, that is the Crown." "Your windows are visible from there?" "Certainly." "You must confine yourself to your room on pretense of a headache when your stepfather comes back. Then, when you hear him retire for the night, which means go to bed, you must open the shutters of your window, put your lamp there as a signal to us, and then withdraw to the room that you used to occupy. The rest you will leave in our hands." Okay, boys and girls, so what's happening here is he's come up with a plan. Sherlock and Watson are going to wait at the little Crown Inn, which is a little hotel motel across from their house. Now, but remember, it's quite a distance of a ways because their house is like kind of like a plantation, has lots of property around it. So Helen, as soon as Dr. Roylott comes home, she's supposed to tell him that she has a very bad headache and she's going to bed. So she goes to bed in Julia's room because otherwise he'd think it was strange. So she goes into Julia's room. She opens up the window, the shutters, and she places the lantern in the window so that Watson and Sherlock know that he's home and that she is, that she's going to her old room. Then she is going to, after she puts the lantern there, they will see it as a signal. She will then go leave Julia's room very quietly and sneak into her old room. And she's going to stay in there. Says, then when you hear him retire for the night, you must open. Now, retire means go to bed. So she's going to wait in her room. That's the other part I forgot. She's going to wait in her room until he goes to bed. And she knows he is in his own room. And once he's in his own room, then she'll put the light of the signal. And that's when she'll leave to go to her old room. It's going to be a signal to Watson and Sherlock. And then you're going to withdraw to the room that you used to occupy. The rest you will leave in our hands. So she's just going to stay there and wait. But what will you do? We shall spend the night in your room and investigate this noise that has disturbed you. I believe, Mr. Holmes, that you have already made up your mind, said Miss Stoner. Perhaps I have. Then for pity's sake, tell me what was the cause of my sister's death. I prefer clearer proofs before I speak. At least tell me whether my own thought is correct. If she died from a sudden fright. No, I do not think so. There were probably some more tangible cause. Now, Miss Stoner, we must leave you. If Dr. Roylott returned and saw us, our journey would be in vain. Goodbye, and be brave, for if you will do what I have told you, you may rest assured that we will soon drive away the dangers that threaten you. Sherlock Holmes and I had no difficulty engaging a bedroom and a sitting room at the Crown Inn. They were on the upper floor, and we could see the inhabited wing, that means the wing that they were living in, that Helen was living in, of Stoke Moran Manor House. At dusk, we saw Dr. Grimsby Roylott drive past. That means when the sun's going down. His huge form looming up beside the little figure of the lad who drove him. The boy had some difficulty in undoing the heavy iron gates, and we heard the hoarse roar of the doctor's voice and saw the fury with which he shook his clenched fist at him. The trap drove on, and a few minutes later we saw a sudden light spring up among the trees as the lamp was lit in one of those sitting rooms. Do you know, Watson, said Holmes, as we sat together in the gathering darkness, I have really some uneasiness as to taking you tonight. There is a distinct element of danger. Can I be of assistance, Holmes? Your presence might be invaluable. Well, then I should go with you. I shall certainly come. It is very kind of you. You speak of danger. You must have seen more in these rooms than was visible to me. No, but I fancy that I have deduced or inferenced a little more. I imagine that you saw everything that I saw. I saw nothing remarkable except the bell rope, and what purpose that could answer, I confess, is more than I can imagine. And you saw the ventilator too? Yes, but I do not think it is such an unusual thing to have a small opening between rooms. It was so small a rat could hardly pass through. I knew that we could find a ventilator before ever we came to Stoke Moran. My dear Holmes, oh yes, I did. You remember Miss Stoner said that her sister could smell Dr. Roylott's cigar? Now, of course, that suggests at once that there must be an opening between the two rooms. It could be only a small one, or it would have been remarked upon at the coroner's inquiry. Does that not strike you? I cannot as yet see any connection. Did you observe anything very peculiar about that bed? No. Well, it was clamped to the floor. Did you ever see a bed fastened like that before? I cannot say that I have. Boys and girls, what that means is Julia's bed was clamped to the floor and she didn't do it. Meaning it was stuck to the floor. She could never move it from where the position it was in. The lady could not move her bed. It must always be in the same relative position to the ventilator and to the rope. And both of those two things, boys and girls, were new. Holmes, I cried, I seen dimly what you are hitting at. We are just in time to prevent some subtle and horrible crime. Subtle enough and horrible enough, when a doctor goes wrong, he is the first of criminals. He has nerve and he has knowledge. Because he was a doctor, he's very smart. About 9 o'clock, the light among the trees was extinguished. That means the light went out. And all was dark in the direction of the manor house. 2 hours passed slowly away, and then suddenly a single bright light shone out right in front of us. "Ah, our signal," said Holmes, springing up. A moment later, we were out on the dark road, a chill wind blowing in our faces. There was little difficulty in entering the grounds. Making our way among the trees, we reached the lawn, crossed it, and were about to enter through the window, when out from a clump of laurel bushes there darted what seemed to be a hideous and distorted child, who threw itself on the grass with writhing armed limbs and then ran swiftly across the lawn into the darkness. "My God," I whispered. "Did you see it?" Holmes was for the moment as startled as I, his hand close like a vice upon my wrist. Then he broke into a low laugh. "That is the baboon," he murmured. I had forgotten the strange pets. There was a cheetah, too. Perhaps we might find it upon my shoulders at any moment. I felt easier in my mind when, after following Holmes's example and slipping off my shoes, I found myself inside Helen's new bedroom. Remember, it used to be Julia's. My companion noiselessly closed the shutters, moved the lamp onto the table, and cast his eyes round the room. All was as we had seen in the daytime. Then, creeping up to me, he whispered into my ear again, "The least sound would ruin our plans." So he's telling Watson, don't make a sound, or Dr. Roylott will be on to us. I nodded to show that I had heard. "We must sit without a light. He would see it through the ventilator." I nodded again. "Do not go to sleep. Your very life may depend upon it. Have your pistol ready. I will sit on the side of the bed, and you in that chair." I took out my revolver and laid it on the corner of the table. Holmes had brought a thin cane, and this he placed upon the bed. By it he laid the box of matches and the stump of a candle. Then he turned down the lamp, and we were in darkness. Shall I ever forget that dreadful vigil? I could not hear a sound, and yet I knew that my companion sat open-eyed within a few feet of me, in the same state of nervous tension in which I was myself. We waited in absolute darkness. From outside came the occasional cry of a night bird. That means a bird that sings at night. And once a long cat-like whine, which told us that the cheetah was at liberty, meaning the cheetah was outside. Suddenly there was a momentary gleam of light in the direction of the ventilator, which was succeeded by a strong smell of burning oil and heated metal. Someone in the next room had lit a lantern. I heard a gentle sound of movement, and then all was silent again. Though the smell grew stronger, for half an hour I sat with straining ears. Then suddenly another sound became audible, a gentle, soothing sound like steam escaping from a kettle. The instant we heard it, Holmes sprang from the bed, struck a match, and lashed furiously with his cane at the bell pull. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, boys and girls, that's the end of part 3. How'd you like it? I told you this was a good story. So now I want you to think about all the clues. Use the pictures that I've put in the notes for you. Use the notes I've put in the notes section for you. Use the book to answer the 10 questions and to come up with a logical reason of how and why and who killed Julia. Okay. We are going to have, next week we'll read the ending. But before we do that, I want to have a Zoom session with us so that we can talk about what we all think and see if we can come up with an actual, the motive we know is the money. But if we can come up with an actual who killed Julia and how they killed her, so that Then we can read the rest of the story and see if we were correct. I hope y'all are doing well, guys. I sure do miss you. Hugs to you all. Miss you. Bye-bye.